Tech is brought to you by Rocket Loans, part of the Quicken Loans family of companies. Offers personal loans from $2,000 to $35,000 by visiting rocketloans.com/whatthetech. That's rocketloans.com/whatthetech. Backblaze. Unlimited online backups for just $5. No gimmicks, add-ons, or gotchas. To start your 15-day free trial, go to backblaze.com/whatthetech. ButcherBox. For $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box for the life of your subscription, go to butcherbox.com/Andrew. Enter Andrew at checkout. Everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarin. Of course, I'm joined by the one, the only Mr. Paul Thorod. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. I know you were very upset over your drapes right now, but
My drapes?
Yeah, behind you, the drapes behind you.
Yeah. Okay.
But it'll be fine. It'll be okay.
Eventually, it will be fixed.
Yeah. I got a lot of
slowly here.
Yeah, I got a lot of feedback over last week's episode. People were very surprised that you're back in a basement somewhere. They wanted to know.
I'm in the same office.
I know. But people, it looks very realistic to many people, and to others, it's not. Yeah. So I heard the emails from people saying like, "Oh man, is Paul doing the show in the basement again?" And I go, "He's not in the basement. It's the same room."
It's I mean, I think it looks fine. I think it will look fine. It needs to be straightened out. I was kind of hoping just by hanging there it would straighten itself out, but it still has a little bit of a ripple to it. It's important that all podcasts be recorded in Hitler's bunker. You know,
that's pretty much how all of them are recorded at this point. Many of them are recorded in a bunker somewhere. We do have a lot to talk about today. Last week, some of this is going to be a follow-up to last week based on the discussions that we've had. Some will be some new stuff. I do want to do a Q&A at the end of the show if you're up for it, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys have any questions for Paul or for myself over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, like that, yeah. If you have any questions for us, you could submit them in the chat room while we're doing the show, and we'll do our best to answer them as much as we can. I'm not taking any requests about why my skin is so shiny right now. I did a face mask last night because I'm getting old and wrinkly, and I look terrible.
God,
and I am glowing right now. Everything is reflecting off my face, and there's no difference in the lighting, so I'm sorry. I'm blinding everybody here today. I do want to go right into something with you, Paul, because I got a lot of these messages.
What have I done, Andrew?
No, nothing you did. Actually, something you did. Last week we spoke about the Edge browser and the future of the Edge browser and Chromium and everything, and there were some image leaks that came out after we did the show. So I kind of want to touch on pretty much summarize what we know and what we know is going to happen over the next, I guess, couple months with this.
Okay. Well, that should be quick. I mean, as people have probably heard, Microsoft is switching its Edge browser over to a Chromium Codebase, right? Which means a number of things, but it'll be using what we call the rendering engine to render web pages, as well as the underlying JavaScript engine and the other subsystems that come with Chrome and Chromium. There have been a lot of questions about this, about what form it takes. What does it look like? Is it going to look like, Chrome? Does it look like Edge? Does it... how does it get delivered, and will it be compatible with extensions and so forth? So we've been waiting. I mean, Microsoft said we'd see the first pre-release build sometime in early 2019, which is now. I think most people like me who kind of follow Microsoft closely had expected to see the first release well before now, frankly. And so these are screenshots. I mean, I don't think the person who posted them has it. I think they somehow got the screenshots. But I don't know. I don't know of anyone personally who has this yet, but the first images show a couple of things. As rumored or as promised, I guess, extension support is there, so it should support Chrome extensions. That's good news. Unexpectedly, it looks more like Chrome than it does like Edge at this point. Maybe that changes. But if you're familiar with the way Chrome looks today, it has kind of a curved material design to it. So the tabs have rounded corners and everything. And Microsoft Edge looks like that basically, except everything is chopped off with hard edges. So it's kind of right angles on everything. But basic look and feel, it looks like Chrome. I don't think anyone would look at that and not think it was Chrome. But it's not. It's Microsoft
So
Edge.
if you kind of dig a little bit more, and of course you can go to Thorat.com to see these images that you guys posted over
Mhm.
there. You actually have in one of the screenshots, obviously you could see that it looks very much like Chrome to every
Yeah,
extent. The other one, if you're scrolling down, you could actually see the extensions. What available extensions you have, which I'm
right.
assuming it's going to be whatever's on Chrome. You'll be able to get access to this, like ad blocker, all the
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff is there. To be honest. Um,
Mhm.
and I mentioned something, and people wanted to understand why I said it last week at the end of the show. We were talking about market share for Edge or
Yeah.
whatever, well, Microsoft in general, right? For the web
Mhm.
browsers, and they have about 3% market share, maybe a little bit more than 3%.
Mhm.
If they were able to, and why, the question was, why is this a big deal for them? Why do they want to change this? How does this help Microsoft? And I
Yeah.
mentioned that if they get a few points, a few more percentage points of that market share,
Mhm.
it's a major change in business for them. And they wanted me to explain to them why. And simply, you're doubling your numbers. You go from 3 to 6, you doubled your numbers. That's potential. I mean, when you're talking about revenue and market share and things like that, that could continue to
Yeah.
grow little by little. And
Yeah,
are
well,
we
but
are we going to take it more seriously if they somehow get to a 10% market share?
right. To be clear, what that kind of usage gives you is eyes on Microsoft services, right? So some percentage of people that choose Edge because it's built into Windows 10 will be using Bing for search, right? Um, you can't see it in the shots because they kind of block it out. But in Chrome today, you sign in with your Google account if you want to, and then you benefit from some kind of a cross browser, cross PC, cross device synchronization of passwords and bookmarks and other things. Um, Presumably, you'll be able to sign into this with your Microsoft account and achieve the same thing across your Microsoft account. Of course, that gives you integration with other Microsoft services online, like OneDrive or whatever, Outlook.com, whatever it might be. And so, um, it- people just using the Edge browser doesn't help Microsoft directly. It's the stuff that kind of goes around it, right? Because Bing is an ad-supported service, for example. If you're hitting Bing a lot with that browser, it really helps. So we'll see. I agree that going from 3 to 6% would be a big deal. I think hitting double digit is kind of the minimum when it comes to it being successful in any meaningful way. I think that again, I'm doing this again off the top of my head. I did the same thing last week, but Firefox, for example, probably has somewhere around 12 to 15% usage share, depending on who you ask.
What were they in their peak?
Um, what were they in the peak? That's a good
Yeah.
question.
I, it,
There was a period of time. I don't know. So the short answer is I don't know. But people should remember that Firefox came up out of obviously the Mozilla organization, and they had something called Phoenix, and that became I think it was Fire something else, and then Firefox eventually um, was an effort to take the browser back out of that big suite of apps they had. Remember the communicator thing? And they wanted to make something very lightweight, and that effort was very successful. There was a time, briefly, I think, when Firefox was one of the top two browsers, certainly, and then the downfall of Firefox was when Google got in the game with Chrome. So whenever that happened, that was probably quite some time ago now, like 2012, something like that. It was quite a while ago. 2012 was probably much longer
yeah.
ago than that. Actually, I don't remember the exact dates anymore, but
If I said
yeah,
30%, would I be off?
no, I was definitely in that range
Yeah,
for sure.
that's kind of what I remember at one point.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, Firefox. Yeah, and I think they just significantly they did another 1% drop in market share.
Yeah,
The battle
they're in a
of
tough spot.
two, the battle of number two is going to be the discussion to have, right? Not number one.
Well, yeah, the market today is very different than it was when Firefox was at its most popular. So, for example, when let's say that 30% figure was correct, that would have happened at a time when Internet Explorer dominated the web browser market. So maybe it had 60% share or something. The thinking at that time was that Internet Explorer wasn't particularly popular. It was just that it came with Windows, and Windows was the primary way that people browsed the web. And so people just kind of use the browser that they had that came with it. So 30% of that market is actually really impressive. Um, in today's world, the most popular browser is Chrome. It's probably 65% ish usage share. Chrome doesn't come with anything, right? Well, it comes with Android, of course, but on the desktop, Chrome is not the default browser on Windows. It's not the default browser on Mac, and those are the two systems that combine to make up most of the user base. Obviously, there are Chromebooks too, where Chrome is the default, but the vast majority of people choose Chrome, and that makes this a different world because you're competing against a product that people actually like, right? They've chosen it. They've
Sure.
gone out of their way to get it. And so it's a different thing. So yeah, the battle for number two, I don't know that I anticipate Microsoft ever being in second place with Edge. And even if they did achieve that, I'd say there's kind of an asterisk attached to it anyway, because it's Chrome, one of the benefits of what they're doing is that there are people in the Windows space who have looked at Edge and were like, "Ugh, like I can't use this thing for whatever reason. It doesn't look good. It doesn't perform well. It's not as compatible with the sites I want to go to. Whatever." They run into this thing. I'm used to Chrome. It works great. Why would I make a change? Well, that will solve that problem, right? And so I think that's cool. I'm looking forward to trying it. Um, I don't know. Number two, I don't know. Are they going to put it on the Mac?
Who knows?
Obviously it's on mobile, so that's cool. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I see that, but I would hope that this move improves its usage in some way. And like I said, 10%. I think double digit is the minimum for that to be considered a success.
For Chrome, for Edge
Or
at this point.
Edge, yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting discussion. I'm curious to see what comes from this because you know, security is one thing. Privacy is another conversation that people have. A lot of
Mhm.
people like the password management system within Chrome, and I think for a lot of people, they're kind of on Chrome for that reason. I was just
Mhm.
reading an article about how I was one of these people that would go back and forth from Firefox to Chrome, and I would kind of try to stay in the mix of all the browsers a little bit. When Chrome makes life so much easier from device to device,
Yeah.
with everything just being there, and I know that there are other tools that you could use to kind of do that, right? But just
No, but they really
basics in
aren't as
Chrome.
seamless. I mean, yeah, the way that Chrome does passwords especially, and I think I mentioned this last week, those passwords pass through the apps on Android. And so if you're using Android on your phone and whatever you're using on the desktop, as long as you're using Chrome, that stuff happens and it's automatically. If people use the iPhone, they might be familiar with the way that you can do that with Safari and the apps come through to I'm sorry, the passwords come through to the apps. That works about the same, but it's not as seamless. There's a kind of an extra step when you authenticate, and you have to always okay it with your thumb or your face or whatever, depending on the phone you have. It's much more seamless on the Android Google side, and it's just yeah. I mean, the bar is really high if they want to get people to switch from Chrome to anything else. The bar is very high, and that's one of the
Yeah,
reasons why.
yeah. I want to continue this discussion, obviously, in the coming weeks, going forward, because we're going to find out more once this is in, inside our hands and more readily available to Windows users. Before we continue, I
Mhm.
want to thank our great sponsor, and that's Butcher Box for $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box for the life of your subscription. Go to butcherbox.com/Andrew. You could enter Andrew at checkout. This is ButcherBox's most popular offer last year, and they're bringing it back for a limited time only. Now, the way that this works, I'm a big fan of this. My wife is doing some crazy diet again. It's more like a lifestyle. It's kind of keto, but it's not, where it's very much high protein and meat and less carbs, because that's where my trouble is. I don't want to tell you what I ordered last night, Paul, because it's embarrassing. But I'm attempting to get back on my diet with this. But for Jess, it's absolutely great because she gets grass-fed beef delivered to her door. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef, free-range organic chicken, heritage-bred pork, antibiotic-free, hormone-free. These guys are absolutely great. It's a much healthier option than going to a chain of sorts and purchasing your meat from there. And it shows up at your door. And they have this great way that they deliver it to your door, where they measure how much dry ice to kind of put in the box. So whether you're in Arizona or you're in New York, it could stay there for a little bit. You're not going to freak out. You don't have to freak out if it's not you're not home the second that it arrives, unless there's a dog outside. Then they might eat it, because that almost happened with me, which was not fun. You get quality beef, chicken, pork. You get the pick it. Either they could curate the box, or you could pick whichever one you want to do. If you just want to do chicken, you want to do beef, you could do that, or mix and match. These guys are absolutely great, and you for a limited time you get $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box for the life of your subscription. You go to butcherbox.com/Andrew and enter Andrew at checkout. That's $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box. For life. That's a commitment, guys, for life. If you go to butcherbox.com/Andrew and you enter Andrew at checkout. Something else I wanted to tell you. The ground beef, it's finally ground beef. Somebody was asking me about it when we spoke about this a while back. It's finally ground beef. That's clean and delicious. And the beef consists of trimmings from sirloin and chuck. So you know it's good quality. It's a versatile cut. You could cook it really quickly for just a weeknight dinner. ButcherBox.com/Andrew. I want to thank ButcherBox for supporting What the Tech. I need to get used to this thing, Paul. This thing is a lifesaver. Totally. This little box that I'm using to switch. Look, you can see yourself on there. You're number 2, right there, right there. Yeah. Where are you? Right over there.
Other way. Yeah, give me the finger, Andrew.
Yeah, I gave you the finger. I didn't realize that, but maybe I did. Maybe it was intentional.
I don't think I didn't catch that.
You know what? You would catch it. By the way, did you like my message?
I did. Did you see my response?
I did. I did see it. Paul did an Ask Me Anything on Instagram on the Thra feed, and I left him a nice question, and the question was, "Why are you such a turd?" I was wondering if you're gonna see it or somebody else is, and they're gonna think that I'm really angry at you.
Right.
I was curious about that. Let's talk about another thing that I've been getting a lot of emails about. I'm bouncing around these notes, Paul. I want to talk about Windows Lite. So,
okay.
I believe we discussed this in December.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm assuming somebody wrote about it now or something happened.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
There is no new information.
Okay.
I find this personally irritating because the person that wrote this added nothing to the conversation. They just collated all of the things other people had written and then pretended that they were able to confirm it. Right. They even took one of Brad's mock-up images, which was purposefully altered from what the thing really looks like, and then he put himself into the picture as if he were the user.
Oh, stop it.
It was just the lousiest thing. And so yes, there's been some additional press about Windows Lite. There is no new information. Nothing has happened. But
so
here's what I'll say. I'm sorry, let's real quick.
Yeah.
Could happen as early as this year, is aimed at both traditional laptops and new dual screen devices. It's going to be a little bit like Chrome OS in the sense that it is it may not run Windows desktop applications at all. If it does, it may be under some kind of an emulation or virtual or contained environment, but it's really aimed at web apps and store apps.
Okay. I have a couple questions for you based on what I was told. When you mean dual screen devices, what are you talking about? Like a courier type foldable device? Like what? Give me like a real life scenario.
That's it.
This is going to be something that happens.
We've already seen prototype designs from Dell and from Intel that follow this path. People are probably familiar, at least in passing, with what courier was. I mean, but there's also, remember those the Lenovo Yoga devices, which aren't technically, it didn't start as dual screen devices, but instead it's sort of like a laptop clamshell form factor, small device, but instead of a hardware keyboard, it was a glass surface with basically like a glass keyboard. Imagine that kind of thing, but with 2 screens. And so in a clamshell form, like a laptop, the bottom screen could transform into a software keyboard if you wanted it, or it could work like a book. Not that, honestly, using a book, like a 2-screen kind of book thing makes any sense at all, really. I mean, but yeah, I guess you could do that, book pages on either side. More likely it will be like a reading, writing kind of a thing. Like you could use it in class, take notes on one side, have a browser or a book display on the other side, that kind of thing. So, we'll see. I mean, I'm a little cynical about this kind of thing because no matter how cool something sounds, it has to have an ecosystem and some app platform, whatever. And that's what's missing in the Windows space, especially in the store side. It's sort of like, we talked about foldable displays. I mean, it's interesting and useful to see these things in V1. I think we all sort of agree at some point they're going to get mature and be really interesting. And in particular, whenever Apple shows up and makes their version where it's like an iPhone and an iPad mini all in one device, that's going to be really exciting. Microsoft putting out a device like this wouldn't make any sense at all because what's going to run on it? I mean, that's the thing. Like once you get past the tech, the excitement over the dual screen thing or whatever, it's like, well, okay, but what are you going to do with it?
It's a very niche
Um,
device as well.
yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously in the Windows space we have no ticking apps, OneNote, and so forth. We have web browsers. That's all fine, and the store app situation has certainly improved. Um, but I just I don't know. It just doesn't feel ready to me.
And it seems like this is, I mean, they attempted this. This happened already, right? To an extent with Windows RT. We saw this. And then
We never saw a dual screen device with
no, not
Windows
a dual
RT,
screen. I'm saying a
but
Windows Lite,
oh
in
yeah,
that
yeah, they've
sense.
been working on this. Yeah, Windows RT is one example. Windows 10s is another example. Yeah, they've been working on this kind of thing for a while. I think what's happening now is that those products were either responses directly to Chromebook or just to mobile in general. That we need a simpler version of Windows that can be supported and updated like a mobile platform that runs a mobile app store and those apps that have all those characteristics of mobile apps that allow those devices to have great battery life and so forth. Um, with Windows Lite, I think the big shift here has been, all right, look, the Chrome OS model is working. Let's just do our version of Chrome OS. And who knows, we talked about Microsoft Edge, for example. It is possible that part of the rationale behind Microsoft Edge moving to Chromium is to make this Windows Lite thing make more sense as well.
That is, I
Because
was thinking about that. Yeah, if you
yeah,
have Chrome-based applications on there,
yep,
um,
yeah, it's like if you can just run something that you already know runs on Chrome, that's a bonus. If you have to go to developers and say, here are the couple of changes you need to make it's really easy, no one's going to do it. Why
yeah.
would we support this thing? Who cares? But if it automatically works, that might make a big difference.
I think that's what it is. How well it automatically works too.
I think so.
I'm fascinated to see more market share. I for some reason I really like looking at these numbers.
Sure.
As far as when you were comparing PC sales on the low end, right? The
Yeah,
Chromebook level of one. What's the cheapest Chromebook now? $200, right?
probably 200
Maybe
bucks. Yeah.
let's say $200
Real
to
world, 175, 200, something like
okay,
that.
175 to 349. That's kind of where that level is for the
Yeah.
Chromebooks that people are purchasing. What exists
Yeah.
for the PC market, and how much
Sure.
market share does the PC market have in that category? Because obviously we've all seen $200 laptops for sale, 249
Yeah.
laptops for sale. If we're getting competitive with overall specs
Mhm.
and overall design and look, where is the PC market falling currently compared to the
Oh, yeah.
Chromebooks?
Yeah, yeah. It's quite a bit higher than that. So here's one of the mysteries of the universe we can contemplate out loud. If I asked you, what is the single biggest complaint about Chrome on Windows today? What would you say? What's the big
Uh
complaint?
that's a great question. What for people in general? What's the big
Yeah, like
complaint?
when people who don't use Chrome or complain about Chrome will often cite this one thing as the reason why. They'll say, "Yeah, I can't." Well, I'm sorry. Aside from
Yeah, I'm curious.
the Google connectivity stuff. I
Okay,
mean,
yeah, I was gonna
the
say
te
the go. Yeah, I'm not big into the Google ecosystem. I would say that would be a. I'm curious. What is the big
okay,
complaint?
it's performance and resource usage. Um, what I hear from people continue is like, "This thing eats up like 80% of the RAM on my computer." I hear this all the time. Now, I take a slightly different view when it comes to resource usage in Windows. I believe that RAM and other resources are there to be used, and that the system is intelligent enough to allot that stuff
Well, that's the
correctly
new mentality,
as
right? That's
yeah.
that's the new mentality, and I think we spoke about this, and I'm always fascinated by that. We kind of have to rethink how we look at RAM. RAM usage now compared to
Well,
RAM
I think so, but
usage years ago, like 10 years ago. It's a very different way that it's working. If
I
Chrome
well,
is using
okay.
5 gigs, it could
Yeah.
still be a hog, but generally it's using what it needs.
Obviously, there are issues where, if the application is poorly written, it could, not give back RAM to the system, you could run into those kinds of problems. I've never
Sure.
personally had problems with RAM in Windows because of Chrome other than on the very lowest end machines I've ever used. It was a 4 GB machine last year that that might have been ARM based actually. Doesn't matter, but whatever. I did have an issue on that system. Okay, but riddle me this: you just talked about 175, $200 Chromebooks. These things will come with 1 GB of RAM, maybe two. They're running on a little tiny sliver of silicon that has 16 gigs of storage or 32 gigs of storage. You know what no one ever complains about on those computers?
Hmm.
Performance and resource usage, ever. So, how is it that Chrome OS can run Chrome in this low end system, no problem at all? But once you get onto Windows, you're like, oh, you're going to have to throw 8 or 16 gigabytes of RAM at this thing.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I wonder about this kind of. This is one of those things I really
Yeah.
wonder about. And so, is the problem Windows? is the problem the Chrome app on Windows? I don't know. I mean, but I do think that's kind of interesting. So, if you wanted to have a low end Windows laptop that could run Chrome as effectively as a Chromebook, that thing would need to have a much more powerful processor. It would have to have a lot more RAM, and it would have more storage. I mean, that's what that happens. But preferably not eMMC type storage. Like you would want at least an SSD of some kind, and that's where the performance
Yeah.
starts to make sense for day-to-day use. And that price point is quite a bit higher than the figure you decided, the 175 to 350.
Yeah.
It's 500-ish,
500. Yeah.
600.
449 to 500. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But as far, do you know what kind of market share it would be for them on the Windows side for those really low end? I'm willing to
Oh,
bet it's
compared,
not.
yeah.
I'm willing to bet it's not a significant market share for them, and I think that's by design.
It's okay. So I have not seen market share broken down that way in quite some time. What I do know is that in the several years, let's say it's about 8 years now since the PC market collapsed, that the focus by Microsoft and by PC makers has been on the high end of the market, the premium PC segment, which includes gaming PCs. And the rationale there is that that is one of the few segments of the PC market that actually is profitable, right? And when you're buying high-end components, the markup will be higher. If you're buying graphics cards, especially more RAM, faster SSDs, whatever it might be, high-end Intel processors, those things aren't just more expensive. The margins are higher too. And so, this is almost like an Apple discussion. It's not necessarily about numbers like units sold, it's about dollars, revenue and profits, right? And that segment, even though it's probably smaller from a unit perspective, is much bigger from a revenue and definitely from a profit perspective. I don't think the rest of the PC industry actually makes any money at all. So I don't. The short answer is I don't know. I suspect it's split in some way between what I'll call three different markets, and I think most of the sales are in the middle part of the market,
Interesting.
which are the very low end PCs, what I'll call mid market PCs, the $500-$600 PC, and then premium PCs, which is $1,000 and up.
Yeah.
All the money's made at the high end. I think all of the volume, most of the volume,
Is the mid range.
is in the middle. I think
Yeah.
so.
I have a couple more questions about this, but since we're on the topic of PCs and stuff, I do want to remind everybody that I'm a big fan, a big fan of Backblaze. I installed it actually on my wife's computer because she's weird about backing stuff up. I started using, I should say, Backblaze with my wife's stuff because she's weird about backing stuff up. She really doesn't like using. She's actually terrible at it. Let me just say that. She's absolutely the worst about backing stuff up. And I had to take over for that because every time she something happens, she'll lose something. It happens constantly. I'm very good at it, and I've been trained to do this because I've lost so many things. Paul, have I told you about the disaster of 2008 for me? Have I ever explained that day to you? I
I'm not
had a
sure. What are
raid.
you
I had
referring
a
to?
raid array, which I had a raid 0. So I was not backing up anything. It was just, one giant hard drive essentially. And the raid collapsed. And because the raid controller, something happened with the raid controller on the motherboard. I lost everything. I mean, literally everything I had ever saved, all my photos, everything, essentially. After that, I was adamant at backing up. And I was, one of these crazy people. I had backups and backups and backups and servers. I'm now all about the cloud. And you could be too with Backblaze. Backblaze Unlimited Backup. This is great. Get a peace of mind knowing your files are backed up securely in the cloud. You can back up your Mac or your PC for just $5 a month. And they got a great offer for our audience. Go to backblaze.com/whatthetech and you get a free 15-day trial to check it out. To see how you like it. Also, if you go to their website right now, if you go to backblaze.com/whatthetech, you could actually see a comparison between them and their competitors, and what they offer and what they don't offer, and how much they cost and how much Backblaze costs. Listen, I've known about Backblaze for a long time. I gave them a shot right before we started with them, and I'm using it on my wife's computer, which is great. They are, I know a lot of our audience does, and they also do business backup. This is personal right now that we're talking about, but they do business backup. They do cloud storage. They have a whole lot of stuff here, and you could also go and see their reviews. Their pricing begins at $5 a month. Or $50 a year, or $95 for 2 years, which is awesome. Backblaze.com/whatthetech. I do want to spend some time and tell you about that day, because it was devastating. I don't know. Has that ever happened to you, Paul? Where you lost everything, essentially?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
The way that people get the backup religion is to lose something that's important to them. That's how that works.
Yep. And that's really, I'm still, it bothers me still. I know it's crazy to talk about this. And I know this is not part of the library, but I just want people to know the emotion that I have about backing up, because I'm still really, it's devastating. And every now and then, if I'm going through my attic or I'm just going through stuff, I occasionally find a CD-ROM that may have a bit, and it's like, oh my God, this may have something. And I'll have to get my, and obviously, what computer do I have right now that has a CD-ROM drive? Nothing. So I have to find the external drive, pop it in, and do a hope, just hope that I could get it. And I actually found photos of my brothers and me when I was probably like 14, 15 years old that I had scanned. And I don't have access to any of those photos. I had those, and I had what was it? I had a video from a class trip when I was 16. And I was able to get that. And, you find something like this and you say, oh my God, that's great. Imagine if I had everything else.
Right.
It's a struggle for me. So I am crazy and religious about backing up. Go to backblaze.com/whatthetech. Try them out. 15 days. And it's just $5 a month. I want to thank Backblaze for supporting the show. It's still devastating to me. I cry sometimes, Paul, at night. Just sit there by myself.
You're a sensitive guy. Mostly about your skin shininess, probably.
My skin is very shiny today. But it feels so nice. It feels so soft right now. Paul, if you were here, you would want to touch my face. I'm just telling you.
I always want to touch your face.
You probably would touch my face.
When have I not touched your face?
Actually, when have you not? I want to talk about something that's touching as well, and that's the Microsoft Band. You guys have a look back on Thurrott.com, and I kind of wanted to talk about this with you because I know you really like the Microsoft Band, and I believe Steph used it as well, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a review of it. Was the only thing she's ever written for my website.
That's awesome. That's actually
great. Which I thought would be kind of interesting just because she's not technical,
Yeah. So the Band was announced in October 2014, right?
Yep.
It was at a time that, they still had a Windows phone, right?
Yeah, although it worked with iOS and Android, right?
It worked with
the thing that was, it's hard to go back. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, and it really wasn't. But we had, obviously, we had fitness trackers, right? Fitbit was around, and many others. But the capabilities were very basic at the time. And so the thing that was interesting about the Band was that it was, I always use the word bristling at the time. It was bristling with sensors, and it was. It had this crazy number of sensors, including things that were just not available in other devices, and certainly not with this combination of sensors. And I have a list. I'm going to read it because I would never remember these things off the top of my head. But so an optical heart rate sensor, right? And what that meant was it would do your heart rate monitoring in real time, over time, which today is very common. The device I'm wearing now does that. But back then, Fitbit, you would actually tell it to check your heart rate, at that moment. Three-way accelerometer, a gyrometer, a GPS, right? So you could get a map of your run or biking or whatever you might have done. An ambient light sensor, a skin temperature sensor, a UV sensor, right? The idea there was that it could tell you if you were out in the sun too long or whatever. A capacitive sensor was for the screen. A galvanic skin response. That was the way they did the stuff, was actually through the back of the buckle, which was kind of interesting, and then a microphone. For band 2, they added a barometer, which isn't about weather or whatever, but rather about measuring elevation. And that way it could tell when you were going up and down stairs or you were running up a hill or whatever it was, that kind of thing. And then the UV sensor in the band 2 could remain on all the time. And that way, literally, if you were, I mean, it wasn't actually that smart, but it was basically a time-based thing. It could measure the UV and then say, okay, look, it's been 20 minutes. Maybe you should, put a hat on or something like that. Um, the promise of Microsoft Band is what really sold it, because here's Microsoft, one of the few companies on earth that has today what we would call AI capabilities, but these cloud-based services, and they could gather all of your data. You put it up with a company that you trust. They have a backend service that connects with healthcare services and doctors. And there was this promise that we're gonna look at all this data and we're gonna do really smart stuff. And so if you look at what Apple is doing today, for example, with the heart irregularity thing, which is the stupid feature that's implemented poorly, and it will do nothing for 99.9% of the people who use it. But every once in a while, they're going to get a news story. The Apple Watch told me that my heart rate was irregular, and I went to the doctor, and sure enough, I have a problem, and it saved my life. And that's the positive press they're looking for, and that's exactly why they do it. The Microsoft Band, though, what their deal was, we also have your productivity data, and we can combine all this information, your health and fitness, and your schedule, and come up with unique insights into your life. And
Yeah.
the one I remember distinctly was your heart rate appears to be elevated every Monday morning before your weekly work meeting. Maybe you should do meditation or breathing exercises or something like that. That was a feature that never happened. They promised it for years, but that was the aim of this stuff. Was we have your schedule, we have your your health data. There's unique analysis that can occur there, and um, proactive healthcare that can happen there. And it never happened. Like none of it ever happened.
Why?
But that
Why?
was the
Because there was no. I guess the project was essentially dead, or for legal reasons, or because we started around that time, we started hearing more about the ramifications of storing this data and the privacy
yeah,
breaches that
yeah,
could
yeah.
possibly happen. Did that play a part, or was it more just
I
it
don't
didn't?
think so. I think it's like anything else like this. It's a hard computer science problem. I think that theoretically or in some very basic way, they saw evidence that this would be possible, and that they always figured they were going to get it there. And it just never happened. It was just, the thing was only in market for a couple of years. They made two versions of it. One of the things that scuttled it was that both versions had major like quality problems or reliability problems, especially with the strap part of the band, which would fall apart, disconnect from the thing. They completely changed the design for the second version, and it had different problems, but the same kind of problems. Um, the other thing is the Apple Watch happened right in the middle of this, right? And the Apple Watch, the first version, obviously we're talking about something that gets a day worth of battery life. Didn't really focus on the healthcare stuff, although they fixed that. It only had very basic capabilities. Was much more expensive. And then on the low end, you had like the Fitbit and the Fitbit-like devices, which are basically just fitness trackers. And those did all the basics, and they didn't do some of the more advanced stuff that the band did originally, but of course they did over time. Today, they absolutely do. And it was just this tweener product that just didn't quite fit in. Like all the rich people were buying Apple Watches, and all the people who, were just normal were buying Fitbits. And so Microsoft didn't help itself by making it available in a very limited fashion.
Yeah.
It was only available from Microsoft itself, only in the US, only sometimes. It was often not even available for sale. Um, that's typical Microsoft. Just from a consumer product standpoint, they just kind of did what they always do. They kind of half-assed it, unfortunately. And like so many other things, Zune and Windows Phone and Cortana, maybe even to a lesser degree, there's this small group of people who do use it and they love it. They don't understand why Microsoft doesn't do more with it, and then they just kind of sit there and watch it wither away, and
Sure.
the rest of the market catches up, and so it's too late. So they had this little moment. People talk today about how Apple is trusted with healthcare, and I think that they are. Um, I've considered writing an article that's basically, would I trust Apple with my health data? And the answer is yes. There aren't too many big tech companies I would trust with that data. Microsoft is one of them too.
Is it because they would have accountability? You know?
Yeah, it's because they're credible in that way. They're obviously not selling that data. They're obviously not running advertising off of it or whatever. It's like, hey, we notice you have a sleep problem. Maybe you want to buy like a nose thing or get a sleep apnea machine or whatever it might be. I mean, like they're not targeting you. Whereas Google, you got to wonder, right? It's like, hey, we notice you're having trouble going up the hill, fatty. Maybe you'd like to buy a product or get
It
some
knows
weight
too
loss
much.
surgery or something. Like whatever it might be, like just something kind of sketchy like that.
Yeah. Well, Apple. I'm surprised a little bit more than I should have been
Mhm.
on the success of the Apple Watch. Um,
Well, like a lot of things, like the iPhone was like this, right? It wasn't immediately successful. The first version did not sell very well at all. They focused on the wrong thing. Remember at the time, there was wasn't there a $10,000 version of it? They thought
there
this was going
was,
to be
yeah,
like a luxury timepiece, I almost said like a Timex. Like I don't know anything about watches,
like a
like a
Rolex.
Rolex. Yeah, they thought that was going to be a big chunk of the market. And what they discovered is what all wearable makers have discovered, which is that the sweet spot is health and fitness. And so they retargeted it at that. And over the second, and especially the third generation, now with the fourth one that has the heart rate thing, um, that they've kind of laser focused on that. And I mean, it in retrospect, that it totally makes sense. I don't mean to say I don't know that I was out there and saying, "Oh, you idiots, you should focus on this" at the time. But when you think about the types of people that are Apple's most loyal customers, they tend to be on the affluent side of the scale, and those people tend to be educated. They tend to be up on health and fitness trends and what's important for them, and they want to live longer, and they because they're so awesome, and the world needs us. Um, yeah, they're perfect, and when you kind of target that product at that market, it comes together. It makes sense. The first version was just like a frou-frou accessory. It was like, you have an iPhone, here's something else you can buy, you know? And when they focused it, I think it started to make sense.
Yeah, listen, and also we also have to remember it's a limited device. Functionality wise, you got a small screen on your hand. And I
Yeah,
keep telling
yeah.
you that the future of that device is going to be that bendable wristband for the Apple, the Apple
Yeah.
Band or whatever the hell they're going to call it. And now
Well,
it's a reality. I mean, that's
that's
becoming a reality.
that's one of the I mean, the Microsoft Band was bulky for the day, but one of the things I liked about it is that and it's like this Fitbit, you probably can't see it, but I mean, the screen is kind of integrated into the strap. It's not this thing that, extends out from the strap like a watch, like an Apple Watch does. So it's the screen is kind of actually, it's not very well done on this one. This is not as expensive. You can see it's like hard edge there at the thing, but the Microsoft Band, especially the second version, they tried to make it more curved along with the strap,
Yeah.
and ergonomically that makes some sense. But
No,
again, it
definitely.
had so many sensors in it; it was just big.
Yeah, and now we're seeing Fitbit and other smart bands and things like that incorporate a lot of those same sensors that
Oh yeah, for sure.
Microsoft was doing with
I
their
This
device.
one probably does everything that one did. In fact, in 2000, it probably would have been 2015. I say 2016, most likely. I wrote an article saying like, this is how Microsoft could fix the Microsoft Band. And then I looked at a Fitbit Versa and I was like, wow, in every meaningful way, they've already addressed all of these issues. The Microsoft Band probably got about 2 days of battery life, right? Which is better than the Apple Watch, still is. But this thing gets like 7 days of battery life. And that's a huge advantage. Not having to think about charging this thing all the time. In fact, when this thing does need to be charged, it's always a little bit of a surprise. Like, oh, like I don't, I don't really charge it. This is that much. Where's the thing? I don't really think about it a lot.
Um, the accessory business is an interesting business, and we're seeing how Apple is jumping in on that, obviously with their watches, but now also reports are coming out that on March 29th they're going to be releasing the AirPod 2.
Yeah.
That's a reported date. Apple's rumored to have a media event focusing on streaming video and news subscriptions on the 25th. So maybe they'll somehow talk about the AirPods somehow in that event. I don't know how you're going to tie it in. It'll be a stretch, but they'll figure out how to do it. I think it's very interesting. With going back and looking at that band and seeing what the other manufacturers are doing now. Really, we're seeing Android doing, and Samsung has their watches, their gear lineup, and everything. How? I don't really see too many other smartwatches outside of the Apple Watch out there. I really don't. And
no, right. So Android's or Google's platform has not done very well. I've always thought from a user experience standpoint, it was actually much better than Apple Watch, but I can't explain what, you would think with the popularity of Android, there'd be some market for that stuff, but I don't believe any of those have ever done any well. Um, Samsung switched to their own thing, right? They're using like a Tizen-based platform of their own. Huawei has their own stuff as well, and we'll see. But both of those companies have offered over time, like what I would call real smartwatches, right? That look like watches, and then more fitness trackers, which look more like Fitbit type devices.
yeah,
But yeah, for whatever reason, they just haven't really kind of taken off. Huawei, given the popularity of their brand and of their phones, maybe could rival Apple at some point. But I have one of their things in here somewhere. There's nothing notable about it. Huawei makes the same mistake that Samsung does in that they have their own health app. That's aside from the stuff that Google provides. And it's like, seriously, why do we need two of these things? But that's Android. That's the way that works.
Listen, why do you need three messaging services, on a phone?
Yep.
You got the carriers, whatever the carrier wants you to use. You got the OEMs, and then you got Google's.
Well,
and then God knows what Google's doing. They had like 15 of them at one point, right? Is 15 the number? I'm sure we're close.
Yeah. Well, they're all RCS these days, but yeah, I don't know. I know enough, and I know enough people who work at PC makers to kind of understand how that stuff works. When you talk about crapware, a lot of it comes up from a good place, where they're trying to do something good for their customers. They're not trying to remove Microsoft from the PC, or replace, duplicate everything Microsoft does. But that's how it kind of ends up, frankly. And it gets into you get into some weird places. And the big complaint about Samsung phones, which is accurate, is that they do that on the phone. Hopefully later today, it's basically written, but I'll publish my review of the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. And frankly, the big issue there is software as well. They do a lot of duplication of apps that Google already provides, including a health app, like I said. And I'm sure if you talk to them, I'm sure if you even found the most cynical person at that company, you wouldn't find anyone who was like, screw Google. We're trying to get Google off the phone. I think they really are like, look, we know Google has a Google Fit app, for example, like we know this, but we have these devices and they have special features, and we want to make sure that our customers, get value out of that. And that meant we had to do our own app and service. And so we did. And neat. But now there are two health and fitness apps and services on someone's phone. And it's like, what is this? Like, it's confusing.
Yeah. I want to do a Q&A with you. Because people have sent over some questions to me. Some good, some knowingly will anger you. That's what one of them said. Is this going to anger Paul?
I got a lot of sleep last night. I'm in a good mood.
Let's ruin it.
Well,
before we continue, I want to talk about our friends at Rocket Loan. Guys, obviously, we're a couple months in. I know a lot of people are talking about the spring and things that they're going to do. This is a time that everybody starts doing work around their house. I probably decided the worst thing I ever did, and that was demoing my entire first floor. Started off with a very simple, small things, that it ended up becoming a gigantic construction project that took about 6 months to finish. But when you begin this journey, a lot of times you don't really know what you're going to spend. And this is the great thing with Rocket Loan. You can take loans out for either $2,000 to $35,000. So whether you're doing a big project or like I did, or a small renovation where you're just doing a couple of furniture changes and things like that, Rocket Loan could be there for you, which is awesome. You go to rocketloans.com/whatthetech. That's rocketloans.com/what. So here's the cool thing about Rocket Loans. It is very quick to do this. So you have no prepayment penalties. You can pay off at any time. It's simple and secure online process. It doesn't put a ding on your credit report. A lot of times when you're applying for some sort of loan, it actually goes on your credit report. A lot of people don't know that, which I'm surprised. This does not affect it in any way. You got fixed monthly payments. This is it's great for debt. A combination of your debts between all your different credit cards or purchases that you're doing, home improvements, or a large purchase. And it's rocket fast. That's why they're called Rocket Loans. This is personal loans made simple. Go to rocketloans.com/whatthetech. Check them out. I'm a big fan of these guys, and for anybody that is planning on doing major purchases, you kind of want it in one place. You don't want to go all over the place. Also, all loans are made by Cross River Bank, member FDIC. Paul, where do I begin with you? How upset do you want to get?
Well, let's start with the most upsetting question.
Okay. Let's talk about Windows Phone.
Okay. Excellent.
What if you were to guess, and this is a very long message that they sent, so I'm going to kind of combine it. If you were to take a guess right now, do you think Microsoft will re-enter the mobile market within the next 5 years? What's the reality of it?
Yeah. If you mean like the phone market?
The phone market.
No.
What is your definition of mobile? Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure you mean Microsoft will release new categories of mobile devices that will probably be branded Surface, that will straddle the line between a tablet and a computer and a phone, like these dual screen things that we're talking about. So is that thing a phone? No. Is it a mobile device? Yes. Look, if you're familiar with Nokia being the HMD product, the brand that is now making phones, you may be familiar with the fact that those guys have been very successful doing what they're doing. They've been advancing the capabilities, tons of models. They licensed the Pure View brand and have a Pure View. I think it's a 5-lens camera system is coming on the, I want to say Nokia 9 soon. They're doing everything right. And I look at that and I think to myself, why couldn't Microsoft do that? And a Microsoft branded Android phone, I think, would make some sense. In particular, because it's not a one-way dead end street. If you bought that thing and you're like, actually, I don't care about the Microsoft stuff. I just, you're just there for the Android, whatever. You could change the launcher. You could change the keyboard off of Microsoft's. You could change it back to Google Assistant. You could, it's an Android phone, right? And so I guess the problem with that theory is why bother? There are already great Android phones in the world, whatever.
Also, the problem with that would be, who would be their market? Who would be their demo?
Well,
right? Considering that fact that all their services like Office is on essentially every device. What would make them stand out? I think they have one thing that would make them stand out, and that's Xbox Live. Xbox Live gaming.
So I would have gone, okay, so I'll go in a completely different direction. I actually think the one thing that makes this make sense is the enterprise, right? And that Microsoft, like a lot of companies, wants to be all things to all people. And one of the things that Microsoft can offer right now is a full suite of software services and hardware increasingly, right? Because they make Surface PCs. The one thing they don't have is a phone. And there are, the goal of every transaction is not the right word. A relationship that Microsoft has with an enterprise customer is maximizing the amount that they get every month, right? So, for example, if you think about the transition from Windows 7 to Windows 10, that's not the conversation Microsoft wants to have with you. They want you to go from Windows 7 to Microsoft 365, right? Because that's Windows 10 plus Office 365 plus some level of management capabilities, depending on where you are. It's more money, is what it is, right? Microsoft also offers businesses of all sizes the ability to buy or rent Surface devices over time, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe you can't afford to buy 5 or 10 or 1,000 Surface Hubs or Surface tablets or whatever they are, but you can pay the monthly fee for those things, and it makes it affordable, and then your employees get all the same computers, et cetera, et cetera. So, to me, it's just a missing piece. It's possible in the future when xCloud happens that a gaming something might make some sense, but I given all that, I don't know. I still don't see I guess I just don't see it happening. That, even though I would kinda like it to happen.
I if I were to answer that, I know they don't want my opinion, but I'm gonna interject it here.
They don't want mine
I
either, I know.
somewhat agree with you on the Android side. I think it makes a lot of sense for Microsoft to jump on board the Android side of things and have their services as the selling piece. Like you brought up enterprise, great example, right? The fact that they
Yeah.
have they have this monthly payment. If you're deploying 120 of these, do you necessarily want to go and buy 120 phones? No, most companies don't do that. There's some sort of financing. But
Yeah.
if you want to deploy this, you could have it under one place and one umbrella, and it connects to your servers, and everything is managed that way. The thing that stands out to me is that Microsoft has kind of dabbled on the Android side with one now
Mhm.
with Chromium, right?
Yeah.
That's somewhat in that space. But with the launcher that they've launched,
Oh,
that
yeah.
launch
Yeah, yeah.
the launcher that they've launched, the launcher that they have on Android,
Right.
this to me, it's almost like a testing of the waters to see. Okay, well, that's all they got to do essentially, right? Is so make a
Yeah.
launcher, make it look Microsofty. I don't know what you would identify as that, but
Sure.
make it have a
Yeah,
Microsoft feel
yeah.
to it, and
Yep.
go forward from there. And listen, most PC users, most computer users in the world are PC users. So if you could have a seamless tie-in to some extent, it
I
would be beneficial.
Yeah, this is a big topic. I mean, the way the world has evolved, I mean, maybe this is the simplest way to put it, is it's far less likely that any business is gonna have employees who would buy their own computers, and they would be okay with those employees putting their business data on those laptops
You know how
than
much
it
that's
is for
happening.
those.
You know how often
What's
that's
that?
happening.
No, no, I'm
It's
not saying it doesn't happen. What
yeah.
I mean is, there's a greater need for a hands-on management of computers than there is for phones, right? The phones are simple enough that the way like the EMS type stuff, the enterprise management services have evolved is that you can apply policies to a phone and then segregate private data from personal data, and they can do remote wipe, and it's all very easy. And it is far more likely that every human being on earth who's going to work in an enterprise is going to buy their own phone. They're just going to buy phones. They are buying phones. They're buying phones every 2 to 4 years, and they're modern phones, and they have these management capabilities built in. And if those guys want to get their email or their private data down to those phones, it can be done securely, and it's easy, and there's nothing for them to do. They don't have to buy anything, or it just happens. It's not on the computer. It's a little more complicated. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to bring up a web browser and go to their corporate email, whatever it is. I mean, I know people do that, but I mean, as far as like locking down devices, when that stuff is actually very important, it's very easy to do that with phones, and it is more typically done in a hands-on way with PCs. And that may be part of the problem, that a
Yeah.
Microsoft, no one's asking for a Microsoft branded phone. No one in the enterprise is saying, God, the one missing piece is you guys don't make a phone. And by the way, most enterprises don't buy Microsoft computers either, for that matter. They're buying computers from Dell or Lenovo
Yeah.
or HP or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Here's a kind of a tie-in since I brought up Xbox. What do we know about Xbox, the next generation Xbox, and what do you expect at E3 this year?
yeah, I mean, we know they're going to talk about it at E3. We know that it's going to be backwards compatible with Xbox One. We know that Microsoft has latched onto that compatibility as being the big deal, and so there's Xbox backward compatibility, which includes original Xbox and Xbox 360 titles. And then, of course, there's the scalability of the Xbox One platform, where when you go from Xbox One to S to X and to whatever this next thing is, um, you actually get enhanced capabilities as you move up to the chain, but all your software works, right? Which is a huge deal. because you're getting an upgrade market, not just from generations, but within the same product family as well, which is really cool. So my expectation for the next thing, whatever they call it, is that it will be to the Xbox One X what the Xbox One X today is to the S, meaning 60 frames a second, 4K, consistent, across the board. I think the idea here is that you can buy a new game or an existing game, and it will always be better on the newest console. And if you have some library of games, obviously it all comes forward. It's automatically better. The thing will be faster in whatever way. But I think the big deal has to be that we get rid of the trade-off we have today, because most game makers, unless you're making a really simple game, have to choose between. It was the thing we talked about. I think we talked about this earlier. Was that Brad? I can't remember. I'm sorry. I
It's
confused you
okay.
and Brad.
I know. We're the same to you, Paul. We're all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same to
exactly.
you.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
these co-hosts,
yeah,
they're all the same.
exactly. All the right. Yes. Sorry. um, there's a trade-off today that game makers make when they go to an Xbox One X, and the trade-off is always frame rate or graphics quality. And a really complex modern game, you're not going to hit 4K and 60 frames a second. And so you have to kind of decide what makes sense for that game. And so for a shooter, for example, they're going to give up resolution in order to get the frame rate, because that's what's most important, is the performance. I think that this next console, which could be the last one, right? Should it be no compromises. It should be both. You no matter what the game is, you should always be able to hit 4K resolution at 60 frames a second. I think that's what it's going to be. It's got to be the next step up.
Yeah. This is a topic that I had that kind of ties into the next question.
Andrew,
But I'm
can I ask you a
debating.
question?
Yes.
Are
Go.
there any questions in there for you?
I do. Yeah, podcasting
Or are
ones.
you just
But
going to grill me like
no,
it's
I'm
a
just gonna
late
grill
night
you.
police station kind of thing? And
Hold on, I
where
could
were
shine the
you on the
light on
night
you.
of August 11th?
Hold on, let me see if I could shine the light on you a little bit. Let's see if I could do this. Is this possible? Let's see. Can I shine the light on Paul?
Oh, jeez. I see what you're trying to do. Here, let me help you.
Oh, there you go.
Where were you on the night of, that kind of
There
thing?
you go. Yeah, so, let me see. I have another one that kind of ties into a topic, and I wanted to talk about this with you, but I may save it for the bonus show right after this. So the question's going to be, and I had it in my notes, and they were talking about the wackiness of the PC market and if it's coming back. Like the and apparently this was a conversation on Twit last week about how
Okay.
at the late 90s we saw all these wacky devices coming out there, and it was essentially the throw everything at the wall and hope it sticks mentality. And we're seeing that somewhat come over to the phone side, to the mobile side now.
Yeah.
With these, pop-up cameras and notches and all this stuff. So I want to talk to you about the future of cars, but we may just do that because that's going to be a long topic. So we could save it for that. Let me see if I got a quick one here. Yeah, here we go. USB 4. How soon do you think this is going to be adapted within the PC and the Mac I guess level of products?
Well, I mean, arguably it's already there today. It's called Thunderbolt 3, right? So, apparently what's happened is that Intel has retired the licensing fee on Thunderbolt 3. So the USB, whatever they're called, the USB 4, standards body is able to roll this specification into USB, and they're doing it as USB 4, which is hilarious because just last week they announced USB 3.2, right? So when you see if I can do the math on this, when you move up through the USB 3 specs, right, it started out at 5 gigabit per second transfer rate. 3.1, I think, was the one that went to 10. 3.2 goes to 20. And then with 4, we're going to 40, which, by the way, is the exact speed of Thunderbolt 3. And so there's a lot of confusion in the market today because when you look at a USB port, especially a USB Type-C port, it could be anything, It could be basic USB. I guess it could be 3 point. I don't know if the earliest one was 3.0 or 3.1, but it could just be like a standard USB port. Uh, it could have Thunderbolt 3 capabilities, which dramatically improve what's possible with the power of that port. So, I don't know why the timing of this, like 3.2 versus 4. If I were these people, I would skip 3.2 and go right to 4. Right, that should be the next thing.
Yeah, is there a reason
Um,
for the timing of this? Because 3.2 just, I mean, essentially
yeah, last week.
started getting traction. Last week.
I mean,
So,
they ratified it or whatever, but yeah, they need to just go to 4. There's too many USB ports. Like you know how it is. Like if you buy a Mac, and they've always been good about this, you don't get like a couple of USB 2 ports and a couple of USB 3 ports. They always just went to the fastest one, right? So on a Mac today, you get Thunderbolt 3, right? It's USB-C port. The port type is USB-C, but it has Thunderbolt 3 capabilities. In the PC space, it's like a disaster of like, you could have a
it
computer that
is.
only has USB-C, and some of them will be Thunderbolt 3 and some won't. Or you'll have some you still have like different types of USB 3 ports, or probably low end PCs still have USB 2 in some cases. I mean, it's stupid. And I don't understand why anyone. I mean, I know there's a cost thing, and I also know it's a matter of sense, by the way. Um, just put the newest one on the damn
Wha-
computer. Why would you
but
have different
yeah,
kinds of ports? It's
why would you
ridiculous.
do USB 2 now? Why would a PC manufacturer put USB 2?
I don't know.
It's not
I
for
don't know.
backwards capabilities,
No,
right?
no, they're all backwards compatible. Well, the other problem, by the way, of course, is that when you went from USB 2 to 3, most but not all PC makers would color the ports differently. So at least you could tell them apart, right? So USB 2 would be black, and then the USB 3 would be blue or whatever. I think some people actually use yellow ports too, but that's kind of gone out. That's gone, right? So USB-C, you have to look at the little, on the body of the computer, you might see like a little lightning bolt, which stands for Thunderbolt, because thunderbolts are a sound, not a. I don't know. It's
Oh
just,
my
the
god.
whole thing is ridiculous.
Oh my god. So, that I guess that answers that.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we do this? Why don't we do our bonus show, guys? If you haven't checked out our bonus show, we do it live after What the Tech every time that we do What the Tech. Today we're on a Tuesday, so Paul is here. Thank goodness. Because I want to kind of talk about the topic on hand, that I want to talk about the PC market and the mobile market, with this mentality of throwing everything against the wall and seeing if it sticks. We saw a lot of that at Mobile World Congress, WMC. Sorry, Paul, WMC. We saw a lot of that this year,
Mhm.
and it kind of feels like the early 2000s, late 90s to an extent, with all the wackiness that we're going to start seeing in mobile. Guys, if you want to get access to that, all you got to do, go to patreon.com/whatthetech. Fund this there as little as $1 per episode, and you get access to these bonus shows. And essentially, it's a mini What the Tech that we do. Sometimes we talk about technology, other times we talk about other things. Like I wanted to talk about the future of cars, because I saw a bunch of articles like Volvo wants to limit the speed of cars down to 112 miles per hour. They want to have a limiter and everything. So I wanted to talk to Paul about that. But this week, I do want to talk about the other topic here. It's patreon.com/whatthetech. We're going to record it right after this. If you're watching live, you could get access to it. You could watch it with us, or watch us while we record the show. And if you're on YouTube, which I know a bunch of people are, you can show your support for What the Tech by hitting that dollar button. You can become a super chat and fund us there. All things Paul, go to Thurrott.com. Wow, you are being investigated right now. That light is shining on you right now.
Oh, that's because I opened a web browser window.
Oh, that's what happened. Your frame rate plummeted. That's so funny. What happened, Paul? All
I don't know.
right. Yeah, now you're back. All right. All things Paul, go to Thurrott.com. You can sign up to become a Thurrott premium member there. Great articles. A lot of the topics that I get are from, I kind of steal them from you, Paul, from Thurrott.com. That's what I do. It's theft. I take your website and I put it into spoken word at times. You can follow Paul at The Rod on Twitter. You can follow me at Andrew Zarian. I want to thank all our great sponsors today, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.